Today in Flex in the City, we talk to Denis Harty, the country head of Waystone Continental Europe and the CEO of Waystone Management Company. Denis dives into resilience, rugby, and the future of financial services. All that happening right now in Flex in the City.
Hello, everybody. This is Rachel Priest for Flex in the City. I'm privileged to be interviewing Denis Harty, who is the country head of Waystone Continental Europe and comes from the Emerald Isle. Denis, welcome to Flex in the City.
Thank you, Rachel. Delighted to be here.
Yeah.
You're a fan of all Flex in the City, and you've had an impressive number of guests over the last number of years.
Over 80 now. So yeah. So tell me a bit about your story. Were you born in Ireland?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
I'd be even more specific. I was born in Kerry, and as the great John B. Keane says, a day out of Kerry is a day wasted. So unfortunately, I may have wasted the last number of years, but yeah, no, I'm from Kerry in Ireland in the southwest, and made my way to Luxembourg now 25 years ago. Bit more days for an anniversary, but yeah, 25 years in Luxembourg, longer here than there, and it's been a great journey. So I started out, I guess, in Ireland signed up to do law, and I got misdirected somewhere along the line and ended up in financial services. And yeah, I've had a great time working in Luxembourg with firms like JP Morgan, Credit Suisse, and a number of others over the last number of years.
And so you're now working at Waystone. Tell me a little bit about that journey and move into Waystone and a bit more about what Waystone does.
Yeah, I mean, Waystone is a brilliant firm. We're now close to 2,000 people across the globe. Have a really strong presence here in Luxembourg, and primarily we focus on three areas, which is third-party management company services, alternative administration services, and what we would describe as compliance solutions of compliance consulting work. And yeah, really great international business. We have green on the logo, which makes everyone thinks it's very Irish, but it truly is a very international business. We have a very diverse group here in Luxembourg with more than 30 nationalities represented, and we're going from strength to strength really over the last number of years.
Fantastic. So I'm going to go to one of my favourite Irishmen, somebody you're probably familiar with, the lovely Roy Keane. He seems smiling. The lovely Roy Keane. You've probably seen this amazing little clip everyone can see on YouTube where Dynamo is doing this great gig, and Roy Keane, in the end, everybody's saying how fantastic Dynamo is and what great magic he's done. And Roy Keane goes, well, that's his job. So my question to you is, if Roy Keane was here and he was interviewing you and say, what's your job, Denis? What'd you say?
First of all, I'm a big fan of Roy Keane. I grew up watching him for many years. He's much maligned, but underrated in my view. The job, all these jobs, ultimately, when you get into a more of a leadership position, they're about managing people and working with people. So it's really, my job clearly is to set the direction, organize teams in terms of being able to achieve that direction and those objectives that we set as a firm. But really what I do, I'm quasi-counselor half the time in terms of what I do in my role. And it's about just ensuring that the team has the greatest opportunity for success, right? And making sure that people are in the right role that fits their skill set and allows them to grow. That's what I spend my time doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you, Denis, you have a son, Sasha, right?
Correct. Yes.
How old's Sasha now?
He's coming up on 16, so he's still talking to me, which is apparently a good sign.
So I'm always interested in the young generation, because we need to attract them to the industry. What does Sasha think of financial services? Does he understand what you do?
Well, if I told him my job was to manage relationships, I think he was a little concerned. I would say he understands without having any real in-depth knowledge of what we do every day. Now, he has actually been here and done a little bit of an internship of shadowing. So we try to give as many people as possible, not just family members, the opportunity to come in and see what professionals do all day long. I think he's, like I said, nearly 16. He's got to pick his own path. But it's very much, I'm delighted to see him. He does these little things. He trades Pokemon cards. right? And you just think, yeah,
Really?
and he's been very successful at it. So I have very few doubts that he has the skills for whatever the future brings. I think he's got a lot of adaptability, and that's what you need really. I think that's what all kids need when they're coming into as they're maturing and getting into starting careers and things. You just need to be open-minded and adaptable, because certainly the future's, I mean, we're already living it, right? The job you did 5 years ago, 10 years ago is not the job you do today.
Yeah, absolutely. So other than, being open-minded, adaptable, probably growth mindset, what other skills do you think, young people are going to need in the industry in the next 5 years?
Yeah, I look at, I think it's a little bit like that growth mindset. The curiosity piece is really hugely important, right? You need to be curious. I think what you're going to see is a lot of cross-pollination. Effectively, is that you might have a computer science background, or you might have an arts background, a humanities background, but actually it will be the convergence of different skill sets that's going to enable people to be successful, right? So
Yeah.
I don't think it's pick a lane and you're an accountant for the rest of your life. The real value is when you can combine, for example, an accountant profile with some computer skills or AI skills, and then you're more than the sum of the parts is actually a lot more than the individual pieces, I think, at that point. And that's what I encourage younger people to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm testament to that. I'm a mathematician and a psychologist. It's a bit of a...
Well, clearly it's worked for you, Rachel. So yeah.
Absolutely. In terms of leadership that you've experienced in your own career, Dennis, is there anyone that's really stood out as being, an incredible visionary, incredible leadership skills in your own career?
I'm a little bit of a magpie. I'll take from everybody, Rachel. I think that starts from even before career. Like from family and parents all the way through to sports coaches and then into careers. I've been very lucky to work with some amazing people from a pure career perspective. And you saw me here at Waystone, for example. We worked previously at JP Morgan together.
Right.
He's somebody I've learned an awful lot from. It's amazing that you actually learn. A lot of the time we focus on what you learn from great leaders. You can actually also learn a bunch from some leaders who are not so great in terms of what you don't stand for and what you don't want to replicate. But that's my journey. Is I've really taken from a variety of different people at some of those firms in terms of key lessons that you learn and what to emulate and what not to.
Yeah, I mean, you come across as somebody who's got a huge growth mindset that where we are constantly learning. That's just part of life. So I'm really curious. Would you say you personally learnt either about the industry or about yourself in the last year?
The last year,
This is a big question.
Sorry, I mean, take long to reflect on it. I think it really, it's not just the last year, but resilience is really something that's really important. I'm not sure that it's a lesson that everybody feels comfortable going through, but sometimes you do need to be uncomfortable, and you need to recognize that this too shall pass, right? So the journey at Waystone has actually been great, but there's been moments in my career when I've not felt as empowered or enabled or as energized about the role that I have, right? And then it's a question of, well, how do you react to that, and what do you do with that information, right? And I think fundamentally you have to remind yourself that you need to be resilient, that it'll pass. You may not have the best fit at any particular time, but you will find yourself into a role where you really feel that you can bring the best out of yourself and add the most value.
Absolutely. And Dennis, when you're not being the country head of Waystone and you're not being a fab dad, what do you love doing outside of work?
Yeah, look, I have many passions. I guess to focus on one, that rugby has been one that's been not something I grew up playing. I picked it up when I came to Luxembourg, had a great time. I played for RCL and Luxembourg for a couple of years and really enjoyed that experience. I think it's a sport that facilitates somebody going from being a participant into a watcher very easily, right? We just passed the Six Nations, obviously, which is the thing that you learn from that, just both by playing and watching, is that there's a role for everybody, right? Size, there's a role for the super athletic tall kids and the smaller ones. Everybody has a role to play, and that teamwork and interaction And maybe to bring it back to the Roy Keane pieces, everything there's a chain. And if you don't do your job, the next person can't do theirs, right? So I think there is a lot of lessons to be learned from that as a sport and to even apply in a business context.
Yeah, from the job that I do when I've worked with leaders, some of the greatest leaders that I've ever worked with in the industry have been involved in rugby, as opposed to other team sports. So what is it specifically about rugby as opposed to any other team sport that makes it so?
I would think it is that piece is that literally the ball can't go to your wingers unless it passes through sort of 4 or 5 sets of hands in between the. So it doesn't work unless everybody knows their role and performs it, professionally adequately. So it's that, I think that piece is really important, that it's you don't get to perform in isolation, right? And you don't win in isolation, and you need to rely on other people, and then you need to deliver on your own responsibilities, right? So that's what I find about it. And I think the fact that it, like I said, it does have a role for everybody means that you recognize the value in every business we've got multiple profiles, and you need to be able to recognize the value of different people within an organization. They're not all going to be able to do, whatever one particular skill at the absolute highest level, but then they have other areas where they're stronger, and then you need to make sure that they have an opportunity to display those skills.
Yeah. So my last question for you, if Roy Keane was here now and giving some fabulous advice to the financial services industry, what would Roy Keane be saying?
He'd probably say, it just do your job. Enough. Look, what I've seen of Roy Keane, I'd probably engage him in a conversation and try to highlight to him and to anybody else who's not in our industry why ours is a value proposition, right? I'm a great believer in what we do. Ultimately, it might be very abstract at times and very, I don't know, almost academic, but there's real life consequences for what everybody does here in Luxembourg in the financial services industry that impact everybody in society, right? And hope in a positive way.
Yeah, absolutely. Denis Harty, thank you so much for being with us today on Flex in the City. It's been a wonderful conversation. Thanks so much.
An absolute pleasure. Thank you, Rachel.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Flex in the City. We hope that you found inspiration and valuable nuggets of wisdom to elevate your leadership journey. Don't miss out, subscribe on your favourite platform, and if you enjoyed the episode, please do leave us a review. Your feedback really matters. Thank you.